Hello everyone, my name is Rodrigo and I would like to share with you an activity that we do at Spindle in order to help our students understand what we call the exponential principle, which means that you start to being able for us, okay, that means that that's the moment when you start to being able to understand the connections of the language and thus started to using the language in a more secure and comfortable way. And for introducing this subject to your students, something we do here, the first thing is to draw a triangle, because when we talk about the verb tenses, which is the subject we are talking about here, we are talking about the time, and then we can divide the time in past, present, and future. So that's what I'm gonna put here. We have a past. All right, I'm gonna make it a little bigger. We have a past, right? We have a present, and we have a future. And by dividing this time visually and spatially, you help to create a mind spot where this knowledge is going to be placed. Okay, so you're giving your students the possibility to interact with the knowledge in a visual and in a sensory way, because there is motion, and your student should also be invited to somehow interact with this knowledge. After we understand that there is a past, a present, and future, then we have to understand that we have three kinds of sentences that we can create in this past, in this present, and in this future. We can have affirmative sentences, we can have negative sentences, and interrogative sentences. And I'm gonna name all of them here. I'm gonna say this is the affirmative. I'm gonna make it plus, and then I'm gonna say here we have a negative, so minus, and I'm gonna say that here we have an interrogative, so question mark here. And then I will tell you that the same thing that I did in the present works for also for the past. So I'm gonna put it here that we have affirmative, we have a negative, and we have an interrogative sentence also in the past. The same is gonna happen here in the future, right? So once we understand that, we are creating these three kinds of sentences in the past, in the present, and in the future. We already can see some patterns that is repeating. Yeah, these patterns. And what are these patterns that are repeating? Let's take a look. It is that it doesn't matter if you're in the past, the present, or the future. You're always going to be able to create affirmative, negative, and interrogative sentences. Okay? All right. The next step is to have your students understand, and for that I'm going to have to make this screen a little bigger, because what we want to understand now is that, all right, we got that there is a past, a present, and a future, and but we name these tenses, okay? And we name these tenses differently. And I'm gonna name this first triangle here simple. And that means that we have a simple present, we have a simple past, and we have a simple future. Okay? And we also have a verb that works differently of the other verbs, which we call be or to be. I'm gonna put here to be. And this verb also has a past, a present, and future, and all these tenses can be affirmative, negative, and interrogative. And that we also have, I'm gonna have to make my screen bigger here because I want to put more stuff here, because we also have something that we call continuous, and there is, and I'm like this, continuous, and we also have something we call perfect simple. Let's put here perfect simple, because if there is a simple and a perfect simple, there is also a continuous and a perfect continuous. Okay, and for that we understand that, okay, there is a pattern going on here. That doesn't matter if I'm talking about the simple, continuous, verb to be, perfect, simple, perfect, continuous. I'm always gonna have a past, a present, and a future, and my sentences will always be possible to be made in the affirmative, negative, and interrogative. So the thing is, now your student got that there is a pattern. Okay, so there is less cognitive effort here. You don't have to take effort to understand that there are, let's count how many tenses we are talking about here. We are talking about 3, 6. We don't have to consider the verb to be a separate tense, but we like to separate here at Spindle, so I'm gonna count it 3 more. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So the student doesn't have to understand a list of 15 different tenses. The student understands that there are 5 tenses, and the same dynamics happens in all of them, which is the past, present, future, affirmative, negative, and interrogative. Next step is to place what are the elements of the language, that the words that cannot live in these spots. I'm gonna give you an example when we're talking here about the interrogative form in the present simple. We have 2 words that live here. Yeah, they are always here. That is do and does, right? When we're talking about the future form in the affirmative, we have 1 word that lives here. It's always here. It's will. And when we're talking about, for example, the negative form of the past, we have a didn't here. Oh, I have a didn't here. And so when we have a verb, for example, travel, I'm gonna put travel some other color here. I'm gonna make it green, and then I can move travel around and understand that I can ask you, do you travel every week, or does he travel every week? Because you're gonna build it step by step with your student. Okay, I'm just rushing a little bit because I wanna show you that the important thing here is the dynamic that's happening. Okay, so understand that the content you can see step by step in the app Spindle. Okay, in each section of the verb tenses you have a complete explanation of this that I'm doing here. Okay, so the thing here is that we can go around with travel. I can say I will travel tomorrow. Yeah, it's the same travel. So I'm not taking any effort here to understand more things than I need to. Yeah, if I understand what a future represents, a present, a past, an affirmative sentence, negative, interrogative, and what is this verb here, I can move around and say, for instance, I didn't travel yesterday. So this is how your student will, in this activity, begin to understand these connections of the language, how everything is connected, okay? And by understanding first the simple, you have to put all the keywords in each spot here, in the present, the affirmative, negative, in everywhere. Also in the verb to be and in the continuous form, in the perfect simple, perfect continuous. And this is how we ended up, for example, with the, let me take the simple as I was showing you as an example, and you can find that in App Spindle, which is the final drawing of this image that works and serves as a map where the learners can get back to find themselves whenever they need. And the most interesting part is that you can understand the big picture, and then you can zoom in and you can understand now the negative form of the present simple, and then you can let me find it here. You can come here to, where is it? You can come here to App Spindle and you can practice exactly this form. So I'm gonna zoom in and practice the present simple in the negative form. Yeah, which there I understood that there are these two keywords, don't and doesn't, that they connect with these words here, and here then your student's able to create sentences and practice vocabulary and learn pronunciation in this specific activity about the present simple negative. So it's also zooming out, letting your student understand the big picture, and zooming in to practice every and each subject: pronunciation, memory, sentence creation, communication, everything. So this is one example of how we create this exponential learning. And the most important thing to understand is that this example arose from classes where students brought their confusion, I think that's a good word to describe that, their confusion in understanding some aspects of the language, for example the verb tenses. And then together with the students, we started to manipulate these shapes and information, trying to organize it somehow that the student got the message and understood it. And then that seemed to have worked with a student. We tried with a next student, and that we made it some improvements, and then with the next student, and then we came up with that. Yeah, so that's a mind process of taking the parts that apparently are not connected and find a way to connect these parts. The thing is, it doesn't matter how long you have been working with teaching the language, you will always learn something new. You will always find a new way to organize the language, the structure, so that you're recreating mental representations, mental pictures, and these mental pictures will make you have a deeper knowledge, a deeper understanding of what you teach. At the same time, that will help your student to organize his or her thoughts. Yeah, and that's a process that, when built together, exposing yourself through perhaps the confusion your students bringing, and working hard with your student not to explain but to enter his or her mindset regarding to this subject, and try to help him picture it out. Yeah, take this picture off his mind and try to understand the confusion, organize the confusion all together, and then create an image, have these parts of the image interacting, so that your student can afterwards picture that back in. And by picturing that back in, internalizing a new mindset for understanding this subject, and then he's gonna be able to use it and apply that in many different ways. Okay, so that's what we call exponential learning here at Spindle.